it seems like everyone is rather emotionally illiterate. They can't read their own emotions, and they can't read the emotions in others, and thus can't respond effectively. So in this series, we're examining the attachment themes strewn throughout the FX Hulu show, The Bear. We will be discussing in detail each episode as the story unfolds, so that you can watch or rewatch before you listen and then follow along with our discussion. We have seen all the episodes, but we won't discuss any content beyond the episodes we're discussing. So if you haven't seen the show, press pause now, go watch, and hop back on to the podcast.
We are one episode away from the finale of The Bear Season 1.
Yeah, I can hardly contain myself. I was speechless.
This episode is wow. If you thought the intro, like the first episodes of the show, were intense and stressful, we may have to go take a bath in holy water or something. Yeah. This was intense.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, the first time I sat down to make notes, I wrote nothing.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Just in a trance.
Yeah.
Dissociated even.
Or overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Frozen. Not dissociated, but frozen. Yeah.
But before we get too far into, let's introduce our drink of the day. And what we're having is a VIP Martini, which is, I got the recipe from Del Frisco Steakhouse. It's their signature cocktail. And it is infused, Svedka is the brand of vodka. They're Clementine flavored vodka infused with pineapple. So you just cut a pineapple, soak it in the vodka for 2 weeks, and then you strain it through a cheesecloth, and then you shake over ice. So, I mean, the recipe will be in the show notes, but it's that simple.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
It's it's on the sweeter side than most of the drinks that we have. But my wife and I, this is our summertime pool drink that we usually invite people over to partake in and enjoy. So
I will gladly partake and enjoy.
All right.
Cheers, Michael.
Cheers. And when you shake it up, it gets this nice little frothy. It's not a sour. It's just, I don't know why it gets frothy.
It's fizzy from the pineapple juice.
Yeah. But cheers.
The VIP Martini.
This episode in particular, title of the review, we both were talking about the title of doesn't really mean as much to us. At least we didn't find any really impactful.
Yeah, or didn't seem to have some sort of metaphoric meaning or hidden meaning or obscure meaning. It's kind of right on the nose.
Right, just titled Review.
Yeah.
And yeah, the episode, we're going to make this episode a review of Attachment and the characters in the show and try to stick with that theme. But ultimately, how we both have seen this episode is that it is an episode of just complete rupture. Rupture after rupture after rupture. And we'll talk about a little bit later on misattunement, which we talked about in a previous episode of what attunement is, but we'll keep explaining that. But this episode was rife with so much rupture.
Rupture on rupture. Stacks of rupture.
Yeah.
Unfolding.
Which is part of what makes it so painful to watch.
Absolutely.
You can feel the pain throughout, the chaos, and ultimately dysregulation in a lot of people through it. So upon review of this episode, what we find is that there is a ton of misattunement. There's a lack of empathy. And because of this dysregulation and everyone's operating in their insecurity, there's a lack of reflection. There's a lack of curiosity. There's a lack of ownership. Everyone gets pretty rigid in this episode.
Yeah, everyone is out of the zone of tolerance.
Yeah, the window tolerance that we've talked about before. Right.
Yeah.
But one thing I'm excited about, there's several things I'm excited about, but as we've talked to some other clinicians about our show, our podcast, and attachment, there's been some confusion. And I say confusion, but just clearing it up. And what attachment is and how to look for it, how to find it, how to classify it, all of that.
Understand it in yourself.
Right. And the confusion can often be because we want to diagnose, we want to label the reactional behavior of people and make classifications based on how you respond, how you engage. But I think this episode in particular is really great at showing that we can't only look at the behavioral reaction, the response of people, because there's some important characters in this that we've labeled or classified as either anxiously attached or dismissively attached.
Or secure.
Mm-hmm. And the behavior you see in this wouldn't necessarily match it right away. And so we're going to take a deeper look as we review it of how the motivation of these characters really defines their attachment classification as opposed to their reactional behavior. Is there a different way to say reactional behavior? I'm afraid that's too clinical.
Well, the behavior that you will readily see and observe might be deceiving if you don't first consider what might be motivating the behavior in the first place. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to observe. You have to sort of understand the mind and how the mind operates and how the mind is connected to behavior. Mm. Yeah, and so there's maybe a surface, which is not to say that it's shallow, but on the surface, what's observable is this behavior that is rather reactionary and can be deceptive if you don't understand attachment as a science and the classification system in a more sophisticated way. And yeah, the emphasis on the purpose or the motivation or the intended goal,
right,
of each character's behavior is what really helps us understand who they are and understand their classification, which helps us understand how they're generally going to respond in relationships, be that romantic, friendship,
colleague,
raising children themselves.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into it.
All right. Rupture.
So who would you like to talk about first?
Well, I like talking about Sydney first.
Okay.
Because she really is, in some ways, an unconscious, unintentional instigator of all sorts of things happening in the episode.
Okay.
So she's not trying to stir things up, but things are just going to get stirred up because of her.
Sure. Yeah, she's the agent of change. She's the threat in a lot of ways.
Sure. She's an object, or she's objectified as the threat as well.
Right.
Even though the threat is really, for many of these characters, already within them.
Themselves, yes.
It's themselves and their interpretive processes, how they make sense of the world and what is and isn't a threat. But yeah, she makes a mistake.
Yeah.
That does not seem consciously intentional. I can appreciate it may have been driven by some unconscious things, which is a different sort of theory.
Right.
But she has, in the previous episode, unbeknownst to us, given a plate of delicious risotto and
short rib.
Is a short rib. And unbeknownst to Sydney, she's given it to a food critic. And so the opening scene is Ibra reading in his sort of broken, maybe
ESL.
Yeah, ESL, disjointed, laborious reading of this review.
But with so much pride.
Dripping with pride. Yeah. And like, I imagine he's proud to work there, proud to know Sydney. Proud to have maybe even had a bite of it. I don't remember. Right. It was one of them that did, but I know a lot of them did. Yeah. And so it's Sydney's sort of mistake that is going to bring a lot of attention and traffic.
And her impatience that was highlighted previously.
Yeah, that's right. Her impatience of making the dish, making it then, and wanting to sort of force it onto the menu. And instead, she has this very successful review that brings positive attention. At least some think it might be positive. It's definitely going to drive traffic. It's definitely going to drive customers.
Right.
But various characters perceive it differently. But this is, by all accounts, a successful review.
Right, absolutely.
And yet it brings attention to something that's not on the menu and could be perceived as insubordination.
Absolutely.
And in probably other restaurants, it would have been perceived that way.
Yeah, to go around, to usurp, to
undermine the Brigade. And Carmi seems to respond well enough in some regards that he's not threatened by it.
He's not threatened. He didn't seem dysregulated by it. He seems preoccupied, and I don't like that I use that word there.
It's tricky there, but he seems
tricky.
focused on what we're going to do today, which is implement a new system. He's a little, you said preoccupied, so there's a little bit of energy, some anxiety in the air about this new system that they're going to implement, and he's more focused on.
And he's trying to bring everyone into his focus.
Yes.
So he's trying to have Ibram stop reading, Sid stop apologizing.
Yes.
Like,
we're
good, move on.
Yes.
And then you have Cousin coming in, yapping. Yeah. It's good, it's fine, we're focused on this.
Yeah.
And no one's really responding.
Sid is going to Carmi for more affirmation. She's needing more co-regulation. She's needing
validation.
Yeah, I was thinking more comforting and soothing, but validation might be too as well. Because she's feeling anxious.
Right.
She's feeling anxious that she's done something wrong.
That she's offended him.
Or
she keeps saying, are we good?
Yeah. And he affirms, but maybe not in the most adequate way. And certainly not in a way that Sydney's able to receive it and really calm and settle her.
Yeah, she doesn't believe it.
Which is probably, it's this dynamic. It's, would she ever believe it, regardless of what the context is? And is Carmi able to actually effectively affirm, soothe, validate? It's these two people. And if they're both insecurely attached.
With the same classification.
And also with the same classification of dismissive. These are the folks that don't really want to feel their feelings, aren't aware that they're feeling things. Yeah, Sydney doesn't say, I'm really anxious about this and I really need some reassurance and some soothing.
Yeah, in some of the circles, like the attachment circles, they would call for like hands and eyes right here. Of, okay, hold my hands, look in my eyes.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
And so it's this direct validation.
And physical contact validation.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just words.
Right. And so that's almost what's needed right here in this moment, or that's what Sid's needing in this moment. Because his words of distraction and inability to focus and pay attention signify to her that you're not really hearing what I'm saying. So I can't really buy that this is okay. I don't believe
whether it's true or not.
Right.
But it's not able to, they're not able to really soothe and connect and sync with one another.
Right.
They're not really able to get in tune to one another.
Yeah. So that's where it all starts. Right there, right off the bat. We're starting the day. It's a little calm. There's some pride about the article from Ibram. And Sid she seems to be taking it in, like kind of like it feels good, I imagine, for her to hear the praise, to hear that there's some good things being said. But then,
yet I'm sure she's still also simultaneously anxious.
Yeah.
And not quite secure in her relationship with Sydney.
And here, I think this is where Carmi. Yeah, this is where the misattunement starts, and it's starting in so many places. It's happening all at once everywhere.
Yeah. Ibram's not reading the room, from Sydney saying, cut it off, that's enough.
And so again, just because my wife has told me I'm using too many clinical words, just to review misattunement. We're not in sync with one another. We're not on the same page. We're missing one another. There's no empathy for what everyone's going through. It's very me-centric.
Yeah, it seems like people are not able, the characters in the opening scene and for the rest of the episode
Yeah.
are unable to read their own emotions and are unable to read the emotions of others. They're unable to read them accurately, effectively.
Curiously.
With any sort of curiosity or wonder, and then to attend to them and what those emotions are saying is needed. It seems like everyone is rather emotionally illiterate. They can't read their own emotions, and they can't read the emotions in others, and thus can't respond effectively. And to respond effectively to someone's emotional cues is to be attuned to their needs, their personhood, the moment.
Yeah. So misattunement is flying all over the place. And then we have Tina coming in kind of hot.
Right. Well, not angry hot, but she's coming in stressed hot.
Yes.
And probably a little agitated at her son hot. Yeah.
Overwhelmed. Yeah, she brings in her son because he's acting a fool. That's cool. Not doing what he's supposed to be doing, getting in trouble. And this, of all days, to bring him actually to the kitchen. And she has expectations.
Hopes. Needs. Desires.
That, okay, this was good for me. Something happened to me. I'm changing. That this organized way of working is a good thing. There's life in what we're doing here. This is like what she calls it. This is good.
Yeah.
And so in this kind of frantic space that she's having trouble with her son, she's now saying, this is what he needs. He needs this organization. He needs this regulation.
Yeah, he needs what I've been needing. Yeah.
And so she springs it on him. And part of what I love in this scene here is that both Carmi and Sydney do exactly what dismissive avoidant people do. Is they don't speak up and ask for their needs. They squash them and try to take care of themselves and everyone else at the same time. And so in the middle of this chaos that we're rolling out a new system that we've never done before, to go is new.
Already fragile kind of system.
A very fragile environment already. And you want to bring in a foreigner to come and learn and to be a stage.
Yeah.
And today, and so Carmi almost says it, but he hesitates and he's like, today, really? And then moves on. Said, can you handle it? And she does what dismissive avoidance do with shock and says, okay.
Yeah, instead of saying, I can't handle one more thing, I'm going to need additional support. I need to focus my attention here. This is what everybody else is going to need. I can't handle this.
Yeah.
Avoids and dismisses those needs within.
We don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
You and I.
Anyways, moving on.
You don't want to tell a personal story here? No?
Yeah. That would be 4 more episodes.
Okay. But yeah, anything else about Tina there that you would highlight of how she's misattuning to, well, we didn't say that. She's misattuning to the whole situation by coming in here and...
Yeah, so she's sort of overcome by her own need, understandably, that her son's in trouble and she needs help. And she goes to a place that could be a great source of help, but she forgets, she doesn't read the room right. She is not picking up the cues that this is maybe one of the worst days to try and do this, that maybe there could have been an alternative way of addressing her son's being, I don't know if he was expelled, but dismissed for the day or... Yeah. No, I think it's a classic misattunement. Yeah, it's a classic, my own internal needs are overriding my ability to think, take perspective, and take the perspective of the people.
How is that unique to her classification? Because since we're going to be reviewing classifications today.
Yeah, I don't know that I think of it too unique to hers.
Okay.
As opposed to, we all have misattunement moments, regardless of classification. We're all going to have those aspects of rupture, but it's just so congruent with Tina, despite her growth that she the arc of her character seems to be growing in security. It's just clearly not all the way there yet. And here's now Tina gonna ratchet up some of the heat, some of the anxiety, some of the stress, no matter her good intentions.
Yeah, it's interesting because she's paying them a compliment at the same time.
That's right. No, absolutely. And trusting them with something that's very precious to her, clearly, her son, no matter how angry she is at him.
Right.
No matter all that, it's congruent in the way that it's going to contribute to a dysregulation. It's going to contribute to a disorganization. It's going to contribute to some chaos. In that way, it's congruent, I think, with a disorganized kind of attachment of these different kind of vacillating strategies that across time in general don't tend to really actually help the situation, but often make it even more complicated.
Yeah, gosh. Okay. I have more thoughts, but I don't think they'll really apply there. So you want to talk about next? Let's do Richie.
Okay.
So we've originally classified him as anxiously preoccupied.
Yeah, we think about
entangled.
him that way because he seems to always bring the temperature up. He always brings the energy up. He always brings emotion in general in more up and intense kind of ways. That's how we think about him.
Well, and so as I mentioned earlier, this episode's great at showing it's not just the reactive behavior of that up energy, but the motivation behind it. And Richie starts off turning the volume up. He starts off in just criticizing, causing just chaos around the review in the paper, just being really passive aggressive about it all. We don't do risotto. Why is that on the menu? Surely that's not us, and surely this guy's a hack. He doesn't know what he's writing about, obviously. And then just keeps pestering, antagonizing Sydney.
In particular.
Yeah. And
he's feeling threatened, because he's always feeling threatened.
Change is happening, and he's going to get left behind.
Yeah, he's afraid of that. He sees Sydney as threatening. He sees her success as threatening. Yeah, and so
And we've just come off the episode where he's having to face change is really, like he turned the mobsters into the cops.
Yeah. I mean, the fragile ecosystem that he kept describing, Chicago or restaurant business or particularly the beef or really himself.
And again, that's what it's highlighting is I am fragile.
Yeah.
I am fragile. I don't know what's going to happen with this change.
And in a kind of classic way, his means of getting safe and secure and connected is often by turning up the heat. That's what motivates his behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't disappoint. He does exactly what he knows to do, how he survives, uses those strategies. And we'll get to Carmi's event, but where his reactive behavior changed was when Carmi is getting really elevated.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see him going, wait, this is confusing. Whoa, calm down. And it's kind of like you do a double take. You're like, wait, this guy's saying that?
Yeah.
And so that tells us that there is a motivating factor behind there's always a motivating factor. But how would you talk about how is he still classified as anxiously preoccupied attached and has that outward appearance and behavior of, hey, calm down. Hey, this is confusing. Let's rein it in.
Yeah, I would explain it mainly or primarily this way, that when we are talking about classifications, we're talking about a way of conceptualizing an understanding of how someone typically is across time, across contexts. But we are complex people.
Right.
And so we can find ourselves in different states of mind or different conditions. And we may engage in a variety of kinds of behaviors that are more or less effective. And I think of Richie's sort of attempt to calm things down as a means of connection and safety, and as more of an anomaly to his general way of being in the world, his general problem solving way of connecting and being in the world and responding to threat in particular.
Yeah, I don't think of it necessarily as an anomaly. I'm trying to conceptualize it more succinctly in my mind. And I'm trying to think of an example of working with where I have someone who is anxiously attached, and then all of a sudden they're coming in and they look withdrawn, they look dismissive. But it's almost like if I have a partner who is usually pretty like we're going to talk about this. We're not going to bed until we fix this, so we solve it. That's usually the motivation, the MO of how they work. But they get to a point where it's almost they get burned out because there's no response, there's no engagement, and the threat of losing the relationship still exists. And so they'll try a different strategy where they will walk away.
Yeah.
But the motivation behind it isn't so I can go and self-soothe and go inward. It's I'm going to walk away and you better come and chase me. You better come and find me. So the motivation is different. And so I'm kind of wondering here with Richie, if there is a slight motivation of, and it may just be that Carmi getting louder dysregulates him and to the point where he gets confused.
Yeah.
And he's bringing it back to himself of calm down. I don't know what to do here. Are we breaking up? Is this ending? Is this the end? I don't know. That may be too extra, but that's kind of how I conceptualize when I'm working with people. And so there's something about the reaction, knowing that it's not simply, he's not doing this to regulate. He's not doing this to create distance. He's doing it for a different purpose. And I don't know if I exactly know yet.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, of course, these are also hypothetical characters,
right.
And
they're real.
This is really who they are. Yeah. So maybe as we continue to wade through it,
it'll come to us,
or a different understanding will come to us. Yeah.
Yeah. That's when there's an obvious switch in him there of his reactive behavior. Seems to have a different slant to it than is normal. And I imagine it's motivated by not being abandoned.
Yeah, and he returns to his shenanigan kind of ways
quickly
as he gets back into it with Sydney.
That's actually when he gets stabbed right there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
He's saying, calm down, and he backs up and walks into, or she stabs him to the knife.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, that was an intense scene. And to see Sid's face, that didn't seem really remorseful. It was just a shock, but I almost, maybe in my twisted mind, I'm like, it seems like she got a little pleasure out of that. Wasn't apologetic.
I mean, no judgment there, but she did really seem really out of her mind, right?
Yes.
Like out of her.
Not present.
She was going toe to toe with Richie. Completely understandable. She was engaging in Richie's kind of, on Richie's terms, insulting.
Which again is different than her normal dismissive avoidance.
That's right.
Like she was ramping it up.
And I think ultimately to try and get control of things.
Right. So the motivation.
Yeah, in terms of that motivation. But boy, was she making everything worse. And then by the end, she's sort of dissociatively manicky smiling in the corner, the lockers. You know, when she ultimately decides to leave, she seemed gleeful at having stabbed,
but she just wasn't there.
But yeah,
like there's something missing behind the eyes,
flooded, overwhelmed, because boy was she in her feelings, and that's not where the dismissive attached folks like to be. Right, all up in the feelings, emoting them.
Again, doesn't mean they're not feeling. or they can't feel.
Correct. But the consciousness,
They're
the awareness,
safe.
they
Feel
talk
safe.
about and reflect on it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, this episode. So intense.
So we haven't talked about Carmi yet.
Right, yeah.
And you have really thought about him being sort of in the middle of all of it.
Yeah, because when we're talking about like how to talk about characters or scenes, he's connected, he's tethered to each one of these ruptures
Yes.
that's happening. He has a hand
He's
in it.
part and parcel to all the ruptures.
Mhm.
Yep.
And so he's having a bad day. He's anxious from the start. He's worried about how this is going to go. Doesn't feel fully prepared. Is having a hard time getting people to focus with him, knowing that this is new, this is different, this is going to be changed. So it seems like there's an element of him that knows this is going to be a rough day. Like he's prepared. It's not going to go seamlessly.
And he's quite experienced in a number of kinds of kitchens
Right.
over the years that he probably is probably spot on that it's going to be a rough day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And so,
But was ineffective at reading that in himself and asking for help. He's ineffective at bringing the team together and say, hey, this is a big day. Things are already sort of disjointed because Tina's not around.
mm-hmm.
He doesn't understand why. There isn't sort of this team huddle. We have no sense that there's like a team huddle. Let's get on the same page. Let's be a team. We're here together. Even though there's this like opportunity maybe a little bit with Ibra reading the review, but that's just disorganizing, or that's ratcheting it up for everyone. And Carmi just can't get in his feelings and in the feelings of others and respond accurately.
Well, he can't get out of the doing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because that's where he lives. He lives in
And
the
so
doing.
he's rupturing it with Sydney.
Uh-huh.
He's rupturing it with
Well, he's trying to align with him at first when the review, Richie's talking about the review.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of talking out both sides of his mouth.
Uh-huh.
So he's complimenting Sid, saying, hey, we're fine, but also the reviewer, the critic, doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. And he's wanting Richie to get over it, move on, but he's also agreeing with everything Richie says. So when Richie Cousin says, hey, and this guy a hack, and he's like, that's exactly what I said. And so there's a camaraderie that exists there.
Sure.
And it's that double message of, yes, I agree, but stop it. It's really confusing. And so he's misattuned. He may not be rupturing fully, but he's misattuning and not fully connecting with everyone. But
yeah,
Sydney and Richie in particular. And
because he's in part distracted by the doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then even like it gets so he's already getting heated and escalated. And I guess the to-go orders have already come in.
Yeah, I don't know where you are.
Right. Well, I'm trying to think of the stabbing. Sorry. When did the stabbing happen after the to-go orders?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The kitchen is starting to ratchet up, but it seems sort of manageable. The misattunement around Sydney and Carmi and the review seems somewhat manageable.
Mm-hmm.
The way Richie's coming in annoyed by the review and with Carmi seems manageable, even though it's ratcheting up. And then the tension between Richie and Sydney seems to take it to the next level. And then there's, I think, a kind of rupture ratcheting up with Carmi and Marcus.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Where Carmi isn't able to enter Marcus's baking wonderland.
Fantasy world. Yeah.
And is just terse, stop it, get to the cake making. And he's not wrong about that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not an attunement, right? He's not entering and meeting Marcus where Marcus is
mm-hmm.
and helping Marcus get out of it. He's not reading that Marcus is in a trance.
Right.
And thus he's not attuned to Marcus's trance state and thinks his barking was sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me so much of like parents coming in and talking about like, I told them to put their shoes on.
That's right.
I told them to get ready.
And being misattuned to where that child
mm-hmm.
was in the moment.
Yeah.
Were they ready to receive instructions? Well, they should be able to receive instructions, but they're not.
Well, they should or shouldn't be. It's not registering.
They're not. And you
Mhm.
got to be able to read that emotional cue or state of mind in the child
Mhm.
or a partner or,
But
exactly.
this has all been building up
Yes.
in Carmi all day. Because
Yes.
even the misattunement with other people, but that misattunement is affecting him.
Absolutely.
It is reinforcing I'm alone. This is on me. And he's taking it on, and it's building and building.
Whether he's conscious of that, whether he's feeling
He's not
that.
conscious at all of it.
Yeah, not likely.
But it's building, and to the point where the pressure cooker explodes.
Yes. And that's when the to-go orders are opened.
Yes.
That's when things, whatever misattunements and ruptures between relationships were already happening, it's now
Full rupture.
full. I was going to say violent, and then I wanted to walk away from that, but I don't think it's wrong.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah, the intensity, the psychological, spiritual, relational, emotional violence that's about to unfold it's tragic.
But let's talk about, so we've classified him as dismissive avoidant.
Yes.
His reaction is not typical, because it is typical.
That's right. It's not incongruent.
Right.
For sure. Either.
With the classification.
Yeah.
But it's not the most consistent. How do I say that? When we see him yell at Sydney, get the fuck out of my expo.
Yeah.
To the point like he is rageful.
Yeah.
And saying, get away, get away, get away. While that can look like ramp up.
Yeah.
Like it obviously is ramped up.
Yeah.
The motivation is distance.
Yes.
So I can take care of it. So I can go inwards. And so I will manage it by myself.
Yes.
On my own.
Don't need me. Certainly don't make me aware that I need you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to the point where he keeps rejecting Sid's offer to like, I'm talking to Marcus, I'm going to do this. And he says, get out, get out. And
Yes.
so
to the same point, Sid rejects Tina's help in that same way.
Right.
In that same classic dismissive avoidant.
So that's where this can be really confusing.
Sure.
When we're looking at it, because that in itself could look anxious. It can look disorganized. It can,
in terms of classification.
Classifications,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But in the motivation of it, it is get away so I can downregulate.
Yes.
So I'm ramping up to take it down.
Yes. And usually only after being sort of pushed to an edge.
Right.
You typically only after all the other typical classic dismissive avoidant attached strategies were not working.
Right. And this, I have a soft spot for this, in that this is very much my wife and I at times, because I am the dismissive avoidant, and my wife she'll probably correct me, but I'm going to say on the preoccupied anxious attachment classification. She's got heat. She knows how to ramp it up. But there'll be moments when I do finally get agitated, and so I might raise my voice. And when we talk about Michael raising his voice, it's like just a little bit above this.
It's choral. It's choral raising.
So, but the amount it's only happened maybe 2 or 3 times, but
this week.
No, I'm just as avoid. I go quiet. Yes. But the look in her eyes when that happens, and it is of shock and almost horror, and it's like I'm not a bad mean guy at all, and she'll be like, you're yelling, and I'm like, you yell all the time, and she's like, I know, you never do. That's why this is scary. And so it can be defeating of like, I can't have my voice. But also that at that point, I'm usually at the place of like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I don't it's not, whatever I've been trying is not working. And so this is what comes out. And oftentimes that's where I see people come into therapy.
Yeah.
Is when the dismissive avoidance erupts, and it scares both of them.
Sure.
Because they're like, it's not my character. It's not in me. And the anxious or disorganized partner definitely doesn't like it. It dysregulates them further, because I'm gonna get too specific.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stop there. But
we could. Yeah, I felt we were about to dive in a lovely area, but maybe we'll
Yeah.
come back to that.
Yeah, I think we will come back to it.
Yeah.
But for
But the phenomenon is that being outwardly angry and in their emotion
Mhm.
is not incongruent with the dismissive avoidant attachment. It's usually at a breaking point. It's usually after many other failed attempts,
Mhm.
but it's quite common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to take it back with Marcus, who is living in his la la land of donuts and has been encouraged by both Sydney and Carmi,
Supported, encouraged, condoned, blessed.
and then also coached to focus on the task at hand. So like the parent of get ready, put your shoes on, get out of bed, let's go. And it's just been passed over. Like it didn't ring, didn't get through. And so the point where it is pure chaos, Carmi is reading threat in every direction, no matter where he turns.
Including also being it.
Yes. Being the threat.
Being the
absolutely. And then Marcus comes with this epiphany and glee
Yeah.
of look what I
Misreading
discovered.
Carmi,
Mm-hmm.
misreading the entire restaurant, being misattuned himself
Mm-hmm.
to his own assignments, and misattuned to the person he's about to go share a moment with.
Right. Who is his biggest mentor? Like he
Sure.
looks up to him so much and is so excited to enter that world and be a part of it with him.
And needs that.
Mm-hmm. Gosh. And so, but with that, like we've labeled Marcus as securely attached.
Yeah, we've thought of him as probably one of the most securely attached characters because he seems the most emotionally regulated, not over-regulated, but not under-regulated. He seems comfortable with closeness.
Mm-hmm.
He seems comfortable with distance. He seems comfortable with risk and failure. He's collaborative. He's supportive.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to set appropriate boundaries. Yet here he is in his full humanity because no one's perfect.
Right.
Secure attachment isn't about perfection.
Which is such a great point. I think we need to highlight again. Like
Yeah,
secure
let's say that
attachment
again.
is not perfection.
Because first of all, perfection doesn't exist.
Right.
Rupture is the name of the game. Misattunement is always going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And here, Marcus's misattunement is on full display.
Yes.
Yeah. His inability to have attuned and receive and listen and collaborate and be a team member
Mm-hmm.
at that moment of what the team needed, right? He's part of the problem.
Right. And has some essence of security.
That's right.
And he's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some would say, my wife and I were having a debate over this on Carmi's reaction to him.
Yeah.
He erupts, he explodes. And if we're looking at it just from a generalized perspective, downright looks abusive in a sense of
It's aggressive.
It's aggressive,
He
calling him
knocks
names,
something out of
berates him.
Yes.
Yeah. He gets physical, like he knocks it out of his hand, the donut out of his hand, and
destroys it.
destroys it and is spewing like there's spittle coming out of his mouth.
Not in a Hamilton, King George kind of way.
Nah.
Died to be spittled on.
It's a different segment.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to label it as good, bad, appropriate, inappropriate, but it doesn't seem to not match what was going on. You are not attuned, you are not here, you're not reading me, you're not with me, and my other attempts to get your attention have not worked. That doesn't mean we condone violence, we don't condone those things.
No.
But I'm holding that it makes sense how he got there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I
well,
say that? I
absolutely.
feel there's a tension in me of saying that.
Yeah. Well, this is where I think it can be hard to listen to, hard to listen to what we're saying, hard to even for us to say what we're trying to say. And I think one of the things we're trying to navigate is who's the victim here? Who's hurting who?
Yeah.
And we're trying to get out of that binary of where there's one victim, one perpetrator.
Yes.
And we're trying to hold
That's really
both
hard.
of their subjectivities, both of their humanities. And we're trying to see a dynamic here where these are two people who are not attuned to each other, to the moment. They're not reading each other accurately, right? Like Carmi, I don't know what to say. Marcus is not the kind of threat that Carmi is registering him as.
Right.
Yet Carmi is also accurately reading that Marcus is a threat because Marcus is so disconnected, so misattuned, so not being a team player that he is a threat.
Right. I mean, they just tried to order 18 more cakes, full cakes to go, and he hasn't even finished slicing the first ones.
And wants to say, hey, look at my donut. And want to talk about the yeast versus the flour. And I mean, Marcus is such a part of the problem, unequivocally.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that Marcus deserves to be treated the way that he's about to be treated by Carmi.
Right.
But we understand why Carmi is so threatened on some level by Marcus's misattunement, and why Carmi would be frustrated at bare minimum, if not quite angry, at having been told once, this is your job, and then reminded both by Sydney and him, we need
Focus.
you to do your job.
Yeah, I think I like highlighting there that anger itself is not bad.
Not at all. It's understandable. It's righteous. It's good.
Because I think I was telling you earlier, I think it was you, that I almost see this scene as like being with a secure child at a playground who is playing and is able to fully explore and be curious and not be limited or afraid. And at the same time, the park they're at doesn't have a fence and there's a busy street. And if they're not paying attention and walking towards the street, a good parent says no.
Sternly.
And corrects and gets their attention and brings them back. And that's kind of how I see this scene. Again, well,
yeah, I think you see an element of that in the scene.
Yeah, an element of it.
Yeah.
There you go.
That it's layered in there. And that's what it could have been. That it could have been the parent sobering up the child, or it could have been Carmi sobering up Marcus with the pail of water, or clapping of a hand, or a stern sort of snap out of it.
Yeah.
But Carmi is not in his right mind. He is absolutely dysregulated, and so it's too much. And thus it's harmful.
Yes.
He hurts.
Yes, it was hurtful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can see it in Marcus's eyes.
Oh, God,
man,
yes.
he has the best puppy dog eyes. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, he was crushed.
Understood.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Marcus is hurting Carmi and the team by his eloping into Donut Land.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are, did we miss any? I'm sure there were, because it was just, again, rife with misattunements and ruptures. And
well, yeah, it ruptures and ruptures and ruptures to the point that Sydney appears to quit. She walks out for the day.
not the day. She's gone. She's done.
Is that what she said? Does she
say I quit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the ultimate rupture.
Abandonment. She abandons. And there's a look in Carmi's eye of, that's where you can tell he's just not congruent with himself. He doesn't understand that she wants to leave right there.
Yeah. He doesn't understand the impact of his behavior, because he's just sort of in other episodes or other times, he can just say, hey, are we good? And she can be like, yeah, we're not good, but we're good enough.
Right.
We're good. But he has no clue
that this was an option.
No
good.
self-reflection of the impact of his behavior on other people, namely Sid in this particular case. Yeah, and asks, are we good? And she's like, we couldn't be any farther from good.
Yeah.
We're so not good. I quit. And it's so sad. It's so tragic. The whole thing. I felt so sad for, we would talk about this, but
Okay.
I felt so sad for Carmi because he's just losing it. And in such a trauma mind of all what I would imagine what life must have been like growing up for him.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's saying all the things that he probably ever wanted to say to his
mother.
I wasn't going there. I was thinking chefs,
Okay.
mother, father, or the chef bosses that were so dehumanizing. And he's just, I know Carmi. I know him. I know him very well.
We all best friends.
Total best friends on Facebook. I have no sense that Carmi intends to hurt anyone.
I don't think he does.
Right? Like,
at all.
Yet he's hurting so many people, self included. And it's just so tragic. It's so sad. And poor Marcus, just having a kind of dream literally destroyed. And the kind of condemnation that I imagine he's also experiencing, like he did when he set the place on fire. Is that what he did?
No, he strips the breaker.
Yes. And how bad he felt about himself.
Yeah.
And it had the way Carmi was like,
it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. And it's like, well, here it happened again, yet in a more disastrous way. In part.
In a relational way, yeah.
Yeah, in part by the way Carmi responds to it. And poor Tina, just struggling with a son that is getting expelled or popping up. And she's really needing support, and God, was it not provided?
It was not a place of support that day.
No.
But it leads us to rupture is inevitable.
Nevertheless, it's guaranteed.
Yeah.
No life is ever free of rupture. No relationship. In fact, life begins with a rupture, of a cutting of a cord, the rupture of that intimate bond of the womb. And the rest of life is about repairing the rupture.
Yes.
And this episode, there is zero repair from any character toward anyone else, no matter maybe Tina's slight attempt.
I was trying to think if there was any.
I don't think so. And I could say there was no effective repair.
No,
there may have been some attempts.
There was effective attunement from Ibram while he's repairing the cousin's wound. Then he helps distract him and regulate him by telling him a story. But that's the only silver lining in the whole episode.
Yeah.
The rest is rupture, rupture, rupture. And again, this is part of life. It is going to happen. We can't avoid it. And rupture itself isn't going to ruin anything. In fact, the hope is that if repair exists, how do I want to say that?
I want it to be much more
elegant.
The promise is.
Okay.
What is the most reliable truth in attachment science is that what really harms us is not
repair.
The fact of a rupture.
Mm-hmm.
What really harms us is the lack of repair.
Right.
Because rupture, the connection between two people that gets ruptured, is guaranteed. What's never guaranteed is the repair.
Right.
And that's where the harm is done. And that's where we need to heal.
Right.
Both the rupture in and of itself, and then our clinical work is about healing the lack of repairs. And so we hope that the show is going to move toward some effective repairs. But the review is that these are characters drenched in a lack of repair. That's what brought them to their states of mind. That's brought them to the chaos of the beef. They're all struggling with the lack of repair that comes with death from suicide. The permanent nature of not being able to repair with someone and the devastating nature of that. So much rupture. And on the one hand, it's so ordinary.
So common.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a influencer and I believe psychologist.
Okay.
Her name is Dr. Becky.
Oh, yeah.
I think she has a Good Inside Institute or program, and Good Inside. And she has a TED Talk. So if you look up Dr. Becky and TED Talk, she has a great TED Talk. It's a little 10, 15 minute on this exact thing and does a really great application of what it looks like to have rupture, to expect it, to know it, to own it. And then the power of repair, regardless of how much time has gone on, that we have access to it. But we have to do some work to get there. But she has that TED Talk is phenomenal in showing that. If some listeners want to go listen.
The show is going to be good at showing some repair.
Well, I'll do a spoiler alert. I think this episode, the next episode, the final of season 1, is really all about repair. And so I'm excited to talk about that next.
Nice teaser.
And because we're doing this thing, I think we have to start doing this. But we have a goal because we want to keep doing this. But it takes time, energy, and money and finances. And so to help us out and to keep doing this, if you could go and subscribe. So attachment for the number 4, the people. You're watching us now, so hopefully you've already found us. But if you would subscribe, that would be fantastic.
Spread the word. Share with friends.
Yeah. Because while this is a lot of fun, and it's a ton of fun, I want to be able to keep doing it.
Absolutely.
And make this investment. So, yeah.
Thanks for your support so far.
Absolutely. We've had some great feedback. I look forward to some more. So reach out to us as well. Make some comments. Love to engage. I say that. I didn't commit you to that. I'm going to not commit you to that because you didn't agree. This is on the spot, not consensual. But I would love some conversation.
Absolutely.
To start happening. So, all right. Until next time.
All right.
Later.
Bye.